I'm Mike Esnault, and welcome to the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge's AC23 Plus Artist Legacy Series podcast. This is a series where we talk to artists who are doing amazing things in the areas of the arts, including performance, education, production, as well as arts advocacy. We record this series in the Virginia and John Nolan Black Box Studio, as well as in the Jan and Bill Grimes recording studio here at the Carrie Siraj Community Arts Center. Be sure to visit artsbr.org for more information on all the great things we are doing here at the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge. Hope you enjoyed the podcast series, and thanks for tuning in.
How about that? Welcome, everyone. This is the AC23 Plus podcast series put on by the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge, and this is the first installation of our Artist Legacy series. And I'm Mike Esnault. I'm very happy to be here and have a very, very, very special guest, one of my dear friends, Mr. Don Vappie, who is well, where do I begin? He's a band leader. I know that firsthand because I've been in his band for quite some years now. Multi-instrumentalist. As you heard, Banjo. We'll get more into the banjo and his legacy on the banjo in a minute. Guitarist, acoustic and electric bassist. Plays mandolin and probably instruments that he can't even name. He plays so many instruments, it's ridiculous. What am I leaving out, Don? Well, and he's a wonderful vocalist. I don't want to forget that.
I was going to play the slide whistle, but we didn't get to play that tune at Jazz Fest.
And it's not like he kind of plays these instruments. He plays these instruments just on the highest level, world class, and that's again, one of the reasons why I'm really happy to have him here. A little bit more about Don, and then we're going to talk and play. By the way, Don, what was the name of that tune we just played?
It's called Abandon, or Abandon, and it's written by a fellow in the Caribbean. I can't remember his name. He didn't bother to copyright it or anything. But, I mean, it's just it's a beautiful melody, which is what attracted me to it.
Yeah.
My wife actually found it in a book of, I think it was Cajun songs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's a Caribbean tune.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, because your wife, Millie, is a bit of a historian, right?
Yeah, well, she's got a master's in history, but
Yeah.
researching, she's a great researcher, man. She can find anything.
Right. Well, listeners, I want to tell you a little bit more about Don. As well as being a wonderful player, he's a composer. He's produced, and just correct me at any point if I'm wrong, Don, with this.
Okay.
info, but 7 albums to date. As an arranger, this is where we're very much kindred spirits. We love arranging. He's written many arrangements, 4 of which Don did arrangements of Louis Armstrong, Pops, Jelly Roll Morton, for the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, which he's had a long relationship with of course, Wynton Marsalis. And some of those arrangements were published by Warner Brothers, correct?
Yeah, actually transcriptions of those recordings. And, as you know, back then the technology wasn't that great, so there might be some, what do you call it, artistic license involved.
Now, how would you, like you mentioned the word transcribe, and that some people I guess might immediately know what that means, but
Yeah.
what's your definition of that?
Well, it's just trying, as an attorney or as a stenographer in court, writes down everything she hears or he hears.
Right.
When we transcribe something, we listen to the music and try to write all the parts as they're being played.
Yeah.
So that's,
Mhm.
yeah.
In addition to that, Don is a wonderful educator, and I was just thinking when I was kind of reading through some of the things I wanted to touch on with Don. As well, right off the bat, as an educator, he's taught at Loyola University, New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation, the Heritage School, the Louis Armstrong summer camps, as well as all over the world when you do master classes. But as we both know as musicians, I think we're always educating and being educated. I mean, just now when we're going through that tune before we played it, you were educating me on how that tune how it goes in certain spots. So it's really never ending.
Yeah, we're constantly works in progress.
Mm-hmm. You may have some of you listeners may have seen Don on many different occasions, but you may have seen him on PBS in a documentary that he produced and starred in called American Creole. And can you tell us a little bit about that, Don?
Yeah, that was, well, we wanted to do a film that kind of showed the rest of the world what a Creole family looked like. Mm-hmm. And then we were trying to do a recording with all my extended family, Blas Johnson, Reynald Richard, Thaddeus Richard, and Stanley Joseph. Oh, I can't remember all of them. Leonard. Leonard, come on, his last name. Leonard's grandfather invented the sugar cane planter.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because he's from out here, Broussard or somewhere around there.
Right.
And he's married to the daughter of one of the Pips.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, wow. Because we're saying, man, you know anybody that could help us promote this? Man, I don't know anybody. Your father-in-law, man.
Well, from what you've told me, just the names you just mentioned.
Richard Moten.
Richard Moten, who's one of my favorite bassists, who I'm lucky enough to work with many times when I work with Don. But you mentioned some names just a minute ago that the average listener might not realize who you're talking about. You mentioned the name Blas Johnson, now how is he technically related to you?
Well, our grandparents were all like siblings. Mm-hmm. So we're extended from that family,
What I find just so fascinating about, especially New Orleans musical history, is just the families and the lineage of the families, how much they grow out, and how many limbs there are within a certain family of just famous musicians, or very important musicians. So, Blas, tell us a little bit about Blas, because he's an interesting guy.
Man, the most recognizable thing about Blas is he is the guy playing the saxophone on the Pink Panther theme with Mancini.
So he's the guy who is...
Yes, that's him.
Wow.
In fact, I watched the movie. He gets credit at the end of the movie as the saxophone. So,
and from what you've told me, he had a real real close relationship with Henry Mancini.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thing most people would get right away. But he was also in the Wrecking Crew.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me about 6 or 7 CDs with a compilation of different songs that he had played on. He played the piccolo solo on Purple People Eater.
Oh, yeah. That was from the late 50s, I guess?
60s, I think.
Okay, early 60s. Maybe.
And then he's on some Marvin Gaye stuff.
Right.
I saw him. He's on my Steely Dan Asia album.
No kidding.
He's on Deacon Blues. I think he's just in the section, but
right.
he's on it, you know.
Wow.
And I mean, he's on all kinds of stuff.
And these are family members.
Yeah, and Reynold Richard, or as some of the older guys says, "Oh, you're Richard now, huh? You don't live here." We used to call you Richard.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But you know, bless his soul, he passed away a year or so ago. And anyway, he was Ray Charles' first band leader, and he wrote "I Got a Woman."
That might not be the name you see on the actual credit.
I
but
got a
yeah,
woman.
Yeah.
Way across town.
Yeah, that wonderful.
She's
jam.
good to me. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
He did Greenback Dollar, I think.
Yeah.
He wrote a bunch of tunes, but you know, as he said, you know, when you write tunes, when you're with an artist as big as Ray, they want some of it. So
Sure.
you know, a piece of something is more than nothing.
Right.
So that's the way he went with it.
I feel like playing something. We're talking about New Orleans, and of course, there's a real rich history there. Especially, well, obviously, it's the beginning of jazz as we know it. You know a lot. You're pretty much a scholar on all of that stuff. One of those people you've done a lot of transcriptions, arrangements on is the wonderful Jelly Roll Morton.
Yeah. Well, you know, I started doing that. Actually, let me just mention Reynolds' son, Thaddeus.
Oh, yeah.
Thaddeus Richard. He was in Wings. Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Wings. He's got these platinum albums on his wall. I saw.
And in that band, he was pretty much playing saxophone.
Playing
right?
saxophone, yeah.
But a lot of us in New Orleans know him as a
Right, as
pianist,
piano.
keyboardist. Yeah.
But yeah, he's a great saxophone player, man.
Yeah.
But and it's interesting because I mentioned we all came from my grandparents. They were all my grandfather and that family, all those siblings. And what's interesting about that family is my great uncle, Papa John Joseph, and his brother Nelson had the barbershop across the street from where Buddy Bolden lived early on.
Yeah.
And so it was like a meeting place for black musicians in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
And there was, you know, a story of a chalkboard on the wall where, you know, if you needed a trumpet player or something, they'd come in and write it up there. And it's fascinating to me to think about that. He probably played with Louis Armstrong,
Right.
you know, because,
Yeah.
I mean, just playing gigs around town. But,
And to think that's where it really,
yeah.
that's where it began. That's where it started.
They were right there in the middle of it. And I think that family, I'm told, well, Richard's mother, Richard Moten's mother, Marie, she studied at Juilliard. So she was a Juilliard concert pianist. And she stopped touring because of, well, if you've seen the movie The Green Book, she didn't want to go through that.
Right.
That's what really turned her off to touring. It's
Right.
going through that in her life. So she started teaching, and she taught me piano early on. But from what she said, the family, meaning my grandparents and all, they lived out near Welcome, Louisiana, out here. And on Sundays, they'd get together and have meal together, and then they would play music. I mean, they didn't have TV or radio or whatever.
Right.
So that sense of music being important in your life, in the family life, I think comes from that. Because even when I was a kid, everyone had a piano in their house. And my mother made sure I had piano lessons.
Right.
whether I was going to do it or not, you know.
Right.
And it was, I still go, I don't play it well at all. And I dare touch it if you're around, but I do use it. It's my dictionary, my encyclopedia when I'm
Right.
when I'm writing or just trying to figure out something.
There's something about that instrument, because as both of us know as being educators, no matter what instrument the student you're dealing with plays, there's nothing beats going to looking at a keyboard, especially if you're trying to explain theory or anything about music,
Right.
and it's just laid out for you like a silver platter if you understand the
It's
basics
visual,
of it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a
You
very
can see it.
visual reference. In many ways, I think as pianists, we're spoiled when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Well, look, while Don he's holding that banjo, a couple things about the banjo and its association with Don Vappie. Don is in the Banjo Hall of Fame. He has won the Steve Martin Banjo Prize. Times-Picayune of U.S. says banjo has a new Jimi Hendrix, or has a Jimi
Has a
Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix of the banjo.
I know.
That's quite an accomplishment, all those things.
Well, you know, I got here. I was playing in the funk bands, you know, and I was playing electric bass, and I remember being bored to death one night playing Bad Mama Jamma. I mean, it's a great tune.
Right.
I love dancing to it and all that, but it was the repetition of the bass line over and dum 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 bum bum bum
Right.
ba dum bum 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 ba dum da da and do that again, right? So, I mean, we must have played it 20 minutes, and I was like, oh man, nah, you can. A well-trained animal can learn how to do this.
Right,
You know? A dog, a chimp, you know. I mean, I thought of all kinds of stuff, but I ended up quitting the band, and I actually quit playing for about 3 months, and then I'd sit down with I sold all my stuff. And
All your music gear.
yeah, I regretted it and tried to buy them back. But I ended up having a guitar, and I sat down and play along with the Kenny Burrell record. That's how I learned. Let's see, But Beautiful was that one, and Pent-Up House. Pent-Up House was two I learned. So, I mean, but from there, I got a job at the music store. Werlines for Music, which doesn't exist anymore. They had the oldest music store in the country.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that now the Palace Cafe that you
It's
see
now the
on-
Palace
on
Cafe,
Canal
yeah,
Street?
the main store, yeah. They branched out for a bit with little satellite stores around town. But man, I mean, during the Civil War, they sold coffins.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they published the song Dixie. It was published at Werline, so they've been around. And anyway, while I was there were banjos on the wall with guitars and cleaning them, and I picked one up, and it reminded me so much of the single note rhythmic lines that guitars played in the funk bands. You know,
Like what do you mean?
Like,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's perfect because we had to mute the guitar to get that sound.
But it's naturally muted on
It's,
the...
it's naturally percussive and sharp. It cuts through.
Right,
I thought, man, banjo ought to be in the band.
right.
So that drew me to it.
It's the
And-
original funk instrument.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man. So and from there, I just, I ended up getting a hold of one and tuned it like the top four of the guitar, the G, D, G, B, and E,
Yeah.
and played it like that. And some banjo players refer to that as Chicago tuning.
Oh, really?
So it's like a guitar. But then I did a program with Wynton Marsalis. I think it was Jelly Roll Morton. And we did Black Bottom Stomp and some other tunes. And I remember researching and seeing that Johnny St. Cyr played a guitar banjo. It had 6 strings on it. So I found one of those and bought it. And I thought, well, since I have a guitar banjo with that tuning, I'll tune the tenor banjo in the standard tenor tuning, which is in fifths, like a cello, And I remember at that time, I was working at Preservation Hall. And I went there and I learned how to play a major chord in two positions, those two shapes, and I went to work. I just kind of figured it out. I don't know, it just happened.
On the job training.
Yeah. I mean, we were playing the same thing all the time. Yeah. It came into that same situation with the funk band, except it was a little bit more interesting music, at least some chord movement, harmonies, you know. It was a good foundation playing that. I got to play with these old guys, Willie Humphrey, you know, Manny Crusto, Jeanette Kimball. And that was an experience in itself, man.
Well, and along with that, that's when is that when you kind of became familiar with Danny Barker, or he became a mentor to you?
Yeah, actually, I knew Danny before Preservation Hall because I was playing with Bob French, and Bob would call Danny to play. So my first time meeting Danny, I was playing bass, and he was playing the banjo. And the song was I Can't Give You Anything But Love.
Oh, I love that tune, yeah.
And everybody had a solo, and they looked at me to take a bass solo, so I just played the melody on the bass. And Danny turned around, he says, young man, you're going to go a long way playing the melody. And from then on, we kind of, you know, that started the relationship through the end of his life anyway. So.
Well, you feel like playing something?
Yeah, sure.
You were talking about the great Jelly Roll Morton, and I'd really like the audience to hear you sing a little bit.
Okay.
You feel like doing...
you want to do Buddy Bolden?
You want to do Buddy Bolden Blues?
Yeah, all right. Okay, so first of all, there's mentions, you know, New Orleans had a Storyville district, and this song was probably, has some references to things that went on in that, so, you know.
Is that the disclaimer?
That's my disclaimer, man. This is not my personal feelings. I'm just singing a historic song.
There you go, carrying on the tradition.
And I thought, you know, I love Jelly Roll Morton, but I don't play piano, so I learned it on the banjo.
There you go.
So. Well, I thought I heard Buddy Bolden say, he said, you're awful, you're terrible, take him away. Disgusting, undesirable, take him away. I thought I heard him say, I thought I heard Frankie Deuces shout. He said, open up that window, let that bad air out. He said, open up that window, boy, let that bad air out. I thought I heard Buddy Bolden shout. I thought I heard Judge Fogarty say, he said 30 days in a slammer, take him away. Get him out of my courtroom, give him a broom and a dustpan, let him sweep up behind those mules on Bourbon Street. I thought I heard him say, well, I thought I heard Frankie Deucin shout. He said, girl, you better give me that money, I'm gonna beat it out. Better give me that money, girl, I'm gonna beat it out. I thought I heard Frankie Deucin shout.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking about some stuff just now. I wondered, because the banjo notes are so short.
Yeah.
You know, they just kind of, and they die. They just,
Similar to the piano, in a way.
piano?
Well, in a way, you know, not quite to that degree, but yeah.
Everybody thinks of it as being just, and then, but they don't die that quick.
Yeah.
At least my banjo doesn't do that. But I wondered, how do you hold a note? And because it was a drum, I thought of, well, how does a drummer hold a note?
Mm-hmm.
They do a roll.
Right.
And so I thought, so that's why, that was
Yeah.
my thinking behind that, which is probably logical in what people do.
Well, there's the story of Earl Hines when he was playing with Louis Armstrong, and I know he would try to emulate, and hearing Louis, he would hear Louis do his famous, you know, vibrato on the trumpet, and he was trying to emulate that on the piano, which is a form of sustain, I guess. And so that's where he kind of really was one of the first guys to do it, where he kind of coming from Louis.
Yeah.
And he talks about that specifically. And there's a funny story where they're interviewing him. He said, "Yeah, you know, I would steal a little bit from him, and he would steal a little bit from me, and that's how we did." You know?
Okay. Yeah, that works though, and that's how things happen though.
Right.
You know, they just happen.
We were talking before we started recording a little bit about, and I know you're very tapped into this, the influence of Caribbean rhythms as well as harmonies. And can you talk about that a little bit, how it's influenced you?
Yeah. Well, actually, you know, when I got to go back to when I first had my banjo, I would, like a tune like, say, Bourbon Street or something, I would play, and most guys would go, "Let's fly down," and I didn't like that.
Right.
So I played, so I was playing things like that.
No, I'm going to stop you before you, because
Okay.
you just played a whole lot of banjo, and I want to break that down for a minute. Because what you did in the beginning was very, very what I would consider quarter note-ish. And we're doing a little music school for a second, where you're doing that. That's where the beat is.
Yeah.
But even though what you play was really complicated, underneath all of that, the second version, there's this thing.
Yeah,
Sort of like the glue
the
of that.
Tresillo, yeah.
Yeah. So
The three
how would you
against-
describe that, or what is that?
That's Haiti. That's, for me, that's the big influence that New Orleans has from the Caribbean. And I would say Haiti would be the main spot, because after the revolution, all those people came to southeast Louisiana.
Right.
The French was familiar to them,
Right.
and we were a dominant French area. Cajun French, Creole French. And Creole is, it's not really, let me just say, it's sort of a cultural thing. It's really not. Some people try to make it like a race or
Right.
a group of people. It's not. It's a cultural designation. It's gone through a ton of different meanings over time, but that's how I see it.
Right.
And culturally, that rhythm is inside of everything, man. I mean, in my lifetime, all of the hit songs out of New Orleans had that rhythm in them.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Hey Pakiwe. Hey Pakiwe.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and I started noticing that in even other pop tunes. There was I can never think of her name. She's a big pop artist who wouldn't put her stuff on Spotify because she said she was one of those people who had enough money,
Oh.
enough
okay.
clout to not
Right.
just
Right.
bow down.
Right.
But anyway, I remember one of her tunes had this, on the bridge, had that rhythm. So yeah, that's a big part of just living here, man. That's culture. That's our culture.
It's interesting. You're right. How that particular rhythm shows up in so many things, and I remember noticing it. And I'm already a musician at this point, but being around my mother and father-in-law who were from Argentina, and my father-in-law is not a musician, but he loves music, and growing up there, it was tango,
Right.
and he knew that music, and I remember hearing, but it's there. It's that.
It's a little slower.
Yeah, I was playing a little too fast, and,
Well, I mean,
it's
but I
funny
mean-
because he would kind of bust me on that because
Yeah, but the rhythm is there.
it's that
just
rhythm.
Different
Yeah.
tempos.
And I
I
think
mean,
in-
Tico Tico we were talking about earlier, ba-do-ba-dee-da, bing, ba-do-ba-dee-da, ba.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, that was the idea. I wrote this tune called Color of Creole, or as they wrote it in French on the album, Couleur de Creole.
You got to get the glottal.
Yeah, I got corrected on that in Canada, man, where people speak French. That's not couleur. It's couleur, like a cooler.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Okay.
It's okay. Thank you.
I stand corrected.
Anyway, but I mean, that was the point of that tune. It was like the form of New Orleans, like high society. They had parts to them. We were talking about French quadrilles. There was a dance goes with every part of that.
Right.
And the dance and the music are connected, which is something I learned from an African gentleman I met at a museum on the East Coast. He had his own place, Mokime. Oscar Mokime was his name. I remember his name. Can't remember where I was. But I went in because I was on the road and I was looking for bottled water, convenience store. And I saw this place and I went in and I said, hey man, I'm from New Orleans. I know African music plays a big part in, because I'd always heard it. And I said, I don't know what African music, I need to know, what is it? So we spent about 3 hours together. He played all this music that was connected to all the ceremonies he had in his life growing up. Because, you get to a certain age, you get this ceremony, you get this next age, you get that, you get this. So went through that. And he even gave me a CD of a modern day band who he felt kept many of the African music traditions inside of the modern music.
Right.
So as I was leaving, he says, because I bought a DVD from him with a lot of that stuff. I don't know where that stuff is now, man. But he said, now, whatever you do, don't separate the music from the dance because you won't understand. And that immediately I understood more about New Orleans and music than, you know, because you play music in New Orleans, people start moving. They're sitting in their seats, they're moving, their feet are moving.
Right.
You know, second line, it's
Right.
the whole thing. But that was great. The other thing he said to me that I never forgot was, I was telling him how diverse my ancestry is. And, you know, at home in my life, I've been, oh, so you're not really this or that. Do you remember they called Cher? Sonny and Cher. Cher was like half-breed, right?
Right, right.
This guy from Africa says, how wonderful to have such diversity in your family.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah.
That's the right way to look at it.
It is wonderful.
Right.
And I've been okay ever since.
Well, being in your band, and if I was a really good band member, I would actually have this tune memorized, but I have music in front of me. Let's play that tune.
Color of Creole.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. Okay, this is great. If
I'm going to try to hang on.
yeah, me too. Because I wrote this. I always write these things I can't play in the beginning. So
I'm looking at a lot of notes on this page.
I know. Here we go. This is Color of Creole. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Man,
There was a part in there that my old teacher, Alvin Baptiste, would say, yeah, that was the jazz.
that was the jazz.
That's where I screwed up.
Man, you know, it's harder to play slow. I think I counted it off slow because I usually play it.
Yeah, it's usually more up, huh? Right, right.
It's easier to
Well,
play fast.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, I know.
That was a
Muscle
little scary when
memory.
you did that tempo, but.
But that was good, man. Thank you.
So, you do a lot of traveling, or have done a lot
Yeah.
of traveling over the years.
I'm doing more now. That's, you know, I got Medicare, man. I'm doing more.
You got
It's
it all
supposed to
wrong.
go the other way. So, you know,
So where have you just gotten back from, and where are you going?
I just got back from Canada.
Okay.
I had 2 weeks in Canada. We started in Saskatoon, so not too far from Toronto.
Yeah.
I had to fly there, though. And then we flew over to Vancouver, and we finished, you know, in that area. Some towns, Oliver, there was one called Nelson, one Revelstoke, and Kelowna.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. You know, I know it reinforced my bucket list, man. I want to do the train from one end of Canada to the
Oh
other.
yeah.
I really want to do that. I know I got to take off to do it, and that's the hardest part, taking off. But anyway, I did that, and well, earlier this year I was in Cozumel with Wynton Marsalis on the jazz cruise.
And that's a long-term relationship you've had with Wynton.
Yeah, it's yeah. I've known him since high school, man.
Okay.
You know, it's crazy. So anyway, in July, I'm going to be in France. I leave on the 5th. I get back on the 17th, and then I leave on the 18th and go back to Switzerland. I was trying to work it out where I could stay, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
So that's hard on an old man, bro. You know?
Well, those are some. I know there are people listening to this going, "Yeah, I don't feel sorry for you. You have to go to France. You have to go to Switzerland."
Right.
Poor guy.
It's a festival in Verbier,
Yeah.
Switzerland. So
Well, look, we don't have much time left, but I know you brought your guitar.
yeah, and
In addition to
Denmark
the-
in October. Sorry,
Oh, Denmark in October.
I've been going there every year for the last
Yeah.
20, 30 years maybe.
Yeah.
I go every year. So, yep.
Yeah, pull up that guitar. Let's. I want the audience to hear you play this instrument, which is.
Okay. Where, oh, where are you tonight? No, okay.
It's the country set. What you feel like playing?
Oh, I don't know, man. Unit 7?
Yeah, let's do that.
Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Wow.
Don, I'd like to thank you so much again for joining me for this.
Oh, man, it's been a real pleasure. Pleasure. Excuse me.
It's pretty
I
real
forgot
pressure playing
we were
against you, man.
recording it, yeah. No, it's always, man. Anything.
Well, thank you so much, and good luck with the traveling coming up. And I look forward to the next.
I can
gigs
count
that
all
we
my
have
friends
together.
on one hand, bro. In my life, you one of them.
Well, thank you so much, and I feel the same way. And thanks again to all the listeners. I hope you enjoyed this and found it educational, inspirational, and all those good things. And look out for Don Vappie. He's everywhere. So what's your website, Don?
DonVappie.com.
Can't make it more simple than
That's-
that. DonVappie.com. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
The Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge would like to acknowledge our generous sponsors, the Shell Corporation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Louisiana Office of Cultural Development, and the City of Baton Rouge.